Hello and welcome, I'm Kira Scrivener, and today I'm going to be doing my February haul. I bought 5 books in this month, and I really want to talk about them. There was some surprises. The first book that I'm going to talk about, I literally gasped, just like ran toward it, because the backstory is I don't buy new books, I only buy used books, so when I find books that I absolutely love, that I adored, and like I'm enamored with, and I get to buy them, I'm like, oh, this is $3.29, and I am overjoyed. So the book that was Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. This was one of my favorite books of last year. It came out 2 years ago and it was written by a 19-year-old based on experiences in her own town of Oakland, California. It follows a girl who is 17 years old. Her and her brother live alone in an apartment that is not being paid. She also has a relationship with a little boy who lives across the hall, whose mother disappears for large periods of time. And it really looks at all of these ways in which this young girl has been made to be an adult and the ways in which she has been adultified. I think that it's such a powerful book, and I think that one of the most important things is to remember that she is a girl during this period, because a lot of it deals with sexual trauma and the way in which young Black girls are sexualized. And I think so often this book is marketed as a story of a Black woman, which she is a Black girl, and I think that her being a minor adds so much gravity to the situation that is happening. It would be terrible in any situation, but because she is literally a child, it is so much harder to read. Leila Mottley has also won awards as a poet, and that is really evident. She is an incredible writer. I was often spellbound by the way that she weaved words and she illustrated points, and I also had to stop several times during this book in order to just cry because I needed a moment to just process my emotions before I could move on to the rest of the plot. If you have not read it and you have the emotional capacity to read this book, I cannot encourage you to read it more because I think it's just such an incredible novel. From there, we're going to move on to another devastating book, but in a totally different way, and this is The Velveteen Rabbit. This is a 100-year anniversary edition, and this is a book I did not buy. My friend Hannah gave it to me, and I was just really excited to see it because it is a book that both of us loved in childhood, and we are both girls who love sadness a lot, so it was really lovely to share this, and we both have this edition, and I believe that it has some new illustrations and stuff, and I just really love this book. It tells the story of a rabbit who is a little bit more old-fashioned, and it is all about being worn and being hurt and the ways in which love revolves around that. And I think that it is such a wonderful children's book. I really recommend reading this to your children so they can grow up and read books like Nightcrawling and go, this is absolutely devastating, but also so important and so wonderful of a book. We need to start our children early on sadness so that they can like sad books when they grow older. I didn't plan for these books to have a theme. I just went to the thrift store and started looking at books. But we have Henri Nouwen's Turning My Mourning into Dancing. And this is a book by Henri Nouwen. He was a Catholic priest and psychologist. He had a really esteemed career from the 1960s all the way until the 1990s when he died in his 60s. And yeah, he was a professor at Harvard as well as Notre Dame. And then he spent the last part of his life in a community in Toronto that assisted people with mental and physical disabilities. And a lot of his work that I have read has been set at this time and deals with the fact of the humbling of going to someone else's perspective and understanding that you can get all of the honors and all of the things, but that doesn't bring true connectivity or fellowship and all of these things. And I think his books are incredibly powerful. This is a book that he did not completely formulate himself. It was published from many of his unpublished works after his death, but I think that from books that I have read during his life, this is definitely representative of his work and of his writing, and I really enjoy the ways that he talks about suffering, and he is a wonderful pastor in that way. He really humbly and vulnerably talks about suffering and struggles without sugarcoating them, but really talking about the importance of recognizing. One of the lines that really highlights kind of his core theme of this book is, when our gratitude for the past is only partial, our hope for the future can likewise never be full. It really highlights the fact that if we only highlight the good things, if we're only yearning ever for happiness and for joy, and we completely ignore the suffering that has happened in our past, we will never get closure from those things and we'll never be able to move on. So in order to have joy, we must also experience the sadness of our past. And I think that it's just a really lovely book. I always feel like I'm getting a hug from him when I read his books. This trip was just so delightful because I found another favorite, and that is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I read these books a few times, and I own the second book, and I've never owned the first book because, again, I wait until I find them in thrift stores to buy them. So this was really delightful. I love this. The quote that I always highlight from this book is that Gansey ran with dead Welsh kings, and I think that sets up the vibe of this book. It is about 5 friends who all love the mysteries of the past and go on these crazy adventures together. And it is fantasy, but it is not high fantasy. There is not no one really has like a lot of powers or things like that. It's like mostly primarily based on relationships and their dynamics. And if you're waiting for a book that will give you like the most epic battles and most epic scenes, this is not the thing. But if you're looking for a hilarious, well-rounded cast who loves each other and is like found family, I think that this is the book for people who grow up and like dark academia. Like, I don't know if I fully love dark academia because I've never found one of those books that I'm like fully in love with, but this is my version of dark academia. Like, you know, it's these people with their like figuring out ley lines and stuff like that, and it's just hilarious and wonderful. And yeah, it's much more character focused than fantasy focused for people who like that. I really, really recommend this book if you like YA fantasy at all. And the last book I'm going to talk about is a book that I'm so excited that I found, and it was So Big by Edna Ferber. And this is a book that I almost went completely by because the way that I look at books, like I don't just glance at the shelves because you never know what's hidden on the bottom shelf. I go meticulously through every book on the like 8 shelves, and I just go through, and then I like kneel down and I go through all of them. Sometimes I sit on the floor because I'm not ashamed of my book love. The thrift store that I go to most often, they're just like, hey, it's the book girl. And I'm like, yes, I will wear that with pride. That is how all of these books came to be. And originally I went by the spine and then I went back and I saw it and I was like, wait, because this is taken on recommendation of Greg from Supposedly Fun. He read her book Fanny herself, and that is a book that he talks about so much, and it deals with so many aspects of growing up in the 20s and, you know, feminism and all of these things. And I think that it sounded really wonderful. And this is one of her other books, and I believe this is the one that won the Pulitzer Prize. Yeah. So yeah, really excited to read this, and I really wanted to find Fanny herself, but to find So Big, one of her other books, was also really exciting. So yeah, I don't actually know much about this other than it deals with feminism and women in the 1920s, and I love those classics. So I'm hopefully going to read this eventually. This is probably not a book I'm going to get to in the near future, but I'm very happy to have it on my shelves and to look forward to reading in the future. When I look at these books, I realize that none of them are in the same genre, which really shows my eclectic taste of reading. You know, we have a classic, a YA fantasy, a nonfiction, a children's book, and a literary fiction. So, you know, whatever you'd like. Let me know which book you have heard about, that you read, that you were most excited that I picked up, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Any books that you think I would like based on these books, I would love to hear it. And what books did you pick up in February? And I will see you next time.